Ideas for book series are different from ideas for standalones. You can't turn every successful standalone into a successful series. By the end of this video, you will know what makes a book idea capable of supporting a series, as well as how to turn your idea for a standalone into a compelling book series that your readers can't put down. The easiest way, in my opinion, to judge whether a book is a standalone or a series is to ask yourself, who is the antagonist, and what is the conflict of the book? Every book is about some sort of conflict. You have a character who wants something, and you have something standing in the way of them getting it. The bigger your character's goal is, the harder it's going to be for them to achieve it. Also, it's probably going to take them longer to achieve it. If your character has to overthrow the government, this is a very daunting thing and might be something that can span multiple books. But if your character has to solve, let's say, a murder, maybe this is something that could happen in one book. If they solve the murder by the end of the book, there isn't a lot of plot left over or things left over for them to do. There are three main types of series. First is the one that I was just talking about, where there's one story arc that's developed over multiple books. This is probably what you think of when you think of a book series. You have one set of characters that are facing one or multiple different adversaries that are slowly advancing them to achieving one main goal. Readers return to this series again and again because they love these characters. They also love the conflict and the world that you created in book one. The conflict in book one wasn't fully resolved, and so they want to read book two to find out what happens next. One example of a series like this is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Katniss and her allies/adversaries ultimately have a big goal, which is to overthrow President Snow in the Capitol. This is not something that could have been covered in book one. Book one had the primary goal of Katniss having to fight for her life in the Hunger Games, but then in book two, this gets further developed and larger conflicts and larger goals start being introduced, which they have to confront in book three. The main villain in the Harry Potter books also can't be beaten in book one. Even though each book in the Harry Potter series covers its own smaller adventure, they all slowly advance the main set of characters towards this confrontation with he who must not be named. The second type of series that I'm going to talk about is episodic series. I don't actually know if this is the right name for them, but I found it on the internet. These series follow the same cast of characters, but they face a different challenge in every book. The conflict is different in every book. For example, a series like this could be a mystery series that follows the same detective, but that detective has to solve individual crimes in every single one of the books. The crime that he fights in book two is not the same as the crime he fights in book three, but the detective is the same. Even though it's been a while since I've read them, I know that the Nancy Drew books are an example of this. Nancy Drew has to solve a different mystery every book, but she as a character stays the same. The third type of series is an anthology series. These series are tied together by something, like a place or a world or a setting, but they don't necessarily follow the same cast of characters. They'll have different characters and different conflicts. For example, the Marvel movies all take place in a similar world where superheroes exist, but the main characters of a lot of those movies are different. Sometimes there's crossover, like main characters of some movies will make appearances in other movies where there's a different main character, but the thing that really ties the movies together is the world and the setting and the place. You might be thinking to yourself, why can't I just turn any book that I write into an anthology series? Because I did do some world building for that world. This is true to some extent, but in order for an anthology series to really work, you need to have readers come back to your world. So if you write in a contemporary world, and this contemporary world is the only thing that ties together the different books in your anthology series, they're probably going to feel pretty disjointed because the contemporary world is a world in which a lot of books are written in. On the other hand, if you have a really intricate and unique magical world that readers really enjoy and connect with, they will probably come back to that world just to be in that place again, even though your book is not necessarily following the characters that they fell in love with. A complex, unique world will tie your anthology series together tighter. I suppose you could also create an anthology with style. If your tone is the same, for example, if you promise a spooky ghost story in every single one of your books and tell it in a similar way, you could also make an anthology series like that. So with that in mind, how do you know if your idea could potentially be a series? If you have a solid idea for a standalone but want it to be a book series, you want to start by asking yourself these questions. Like I was talking about before, if you want to know whether your book can be a standard series, the one where you have one conflict that is developed over multiple books, you need to examine the size of that conflict. Is your conflict big enough to carry multiple books? In other words, Is your villain hard enough to defeat that it will take your characters more than 100,000 words to defeat them? With episodic series, because the conflict is different in each of the books that are in the series, you don't necessarily need to look at the size of the conflict, but you have to look at the nature of the conflict. Are all the bows wrapped up at the end of book 1 so that you could move on to a completely different storyline in book 2? I can only think of episodic series that happen in the sort of crime-fighting, mystery-solving genre. But that doesn't mean that it can't be done elsewhere. If you have a band of very lovable sea pirates, for example, maybe you can do a series where each of the books follows them on a different mini quest that they have to go on, a different objective that's completely unrelated to the one that they faced before. Can the premise of your idea carry this kind of repeated conflict? Does it make sense for them to have so many conflicts that they need to face one after the other? It probably wouldn't be very realistic. If the premise of your book 1 was that a couple of kids found a dead body in their attic somewhere, and in every single book, they find a dead body somewhere else, and they have to figure out whose dead body it is and solve the mystery. That's a lot of dead bodies for kids to be finding. I feel like they probably wouldn't be finding that many dead bodies one after the other. So think it through and make sure that it makes sense. And for anthology series, examine just how unique your world is. Is there something about this world that you think is compelling enough that it can carry multiple books? Like with the Harry Potter spin-off books, they were successful because people loved the magical world, not necessarily because they liked these new characters that they didn't know yet. Is your book 1 already published and people really love a particular element of it? If you're getting compliments on your world, maybe that's a sign that people just want to be in that space more. In order for your book to be a series, your idea needs to fit into one of these 3 series categories. My original idea for They Stay was a standalone, but now I found a way to make the conflict much bigger, so I'm able to turn my standalone idea into multiple books as my characters are working and fighting towards fixing this much bigger issue. Also, you want to keep your sequels just as character-driven and action-packed and romance-filled as your book 1. You don't want your book 1 to be great and then your book 2 just to kind of sag in the middle and be super boring and then your book 3 pick up again. You want all 3 books, or more books, to be interesting and fun to read. Have there be a bunch of steps that your characters have to do in order to defeat the antagonist, and have each of those steps be interesting and complicated and confusing. And then you can give each of those different steps a book in your series, and bam, you have a series. Make sure you keep your stakes high in every single book in your series. This is the secret to having people continue reading and loving every book in your series. So if you want to write a series, go ask yourself these questions. If you have an idea for a standalone and you don't think that it's a series, play around with it. See what you can turn your idea into and ways that you can enhance the conflict. If you already have a series idea, congratulations, you're awesome, and now go write it. Do you have a favorite book series that you think handled all of this super well? Comment below and let me know. I read all of your comments and I really love it when you guys comment on my videos. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it and to subscribe to my channel for more writing content coming your way every week. My name is Claire Fraze, and I'm an award-winning young adult author who posts videos sharing the actionable writing tips that I learned that helped me make my writing better. Have a good week, everyone, and as always, happy writing.